Good Tuesday morning of the 34th week. I'm going to read the whole gospel here from Luke, okay? And I'll give you my interpretation as I knew it as a kid, okay? Because growing up in the 50s, we were looking towards 1960. You got to be old for that, okay? You got to be around my age to know that we thought was the end of the world. And we would take a text like this and say, this is going to happen. And when? In 1960, January 1st, practically. So I'll read it to you. While some people were speaking about how the temple was adorned with costly stones, votive offerings, Jesus said, all that you see here, the days will come when there will not be left one stone upon another that will not be thrown down. They asked him, Teacher, when will this happen? What sign will there be when all these things are about to happen? He answered, see that you do not be deceived, for many will come in my name saying, I am he, the time has come. Don't follow them. When you hear of wars and insurrections, do not be terrified, for such things must happen first, but it will not immediately be the end. Then he said to them, nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There'll be powerful earthquakes, famines, and plagues from place to place, and awesome sights and mighty signs will come from the sky. And it was that last part that we also had that we thought was going to be the beginning of the end. And we really did think, because there was an apparition. I told you this already. I don't know if it was Fatima or Las. I don't know that. But I remember there was an apparition of our Blessed Mother. And it was interpreted. I don't say this is what she said. I don't know. But it was interpreted that the end of the world was coming, and it would be in 1960. That's how I remember. Now, remember, I'm a kid at that time, okay? And this is the wisdom, this is the pious wisdom of the street, of Ward Street, New Haven. I don't know what happened on Kossuth Street, okay? But this was the wisdom of the people of the street, and we were expecting the end of the world in 1960. I told you that story where my little friend Barbara, she said, I hope it doesn't come on this date. She said, because I want to get my papers back my exams back from school. And I want to see what my grades are. She was the only one with any sense. You know, we lived in apocalyptic times, and there was a reason for it. Maybe there was these predictions. We had lived through two horrific wars, capped by the atomic bomb. And now, by the 1950s, we lived in dread of Russia and the capacity of the Russians to nuke us, as we had the capacity to nuke them. And the monsters that were going to come out of the sea, we saw them as submarines. The Russians had their share, as we did, you see. From the sky, rockets, intercontinental ballistic missiles. They were just in the beginning stages, but bombers. You had to see it. You could interpret that time and with the threat of the Soviet Union. The threat of the Soviet Union being the end of time. This would be the great cataclysm between the powers of evil and goodness. Obviously, the Russians were evil and we were the good, but we were all going to get creamed. And it was the truth. It was so much so. The threat at the time was also real, because radar couldn't completely protect us against Soviet air attack. So we joined the Ground Observer Corps. We were just kids, no older than freshmen or sophomore in high school, actually younger than that, 7th and 8th grade. And we worked in the headquarters. And what we were doing there, we're tracking airplanes. And what we were looking for, not us, but the people out on the posts that were reporting in any large airplane with 4 engines, okay, 4 props, flying under, 5,000 feet or whatever, flying low, because that's how the Russians would stay under the radar, and they would come in under 5,000 feet. And of course, they would hug the East Coast. This is where we were. See? This was a very real threat to us. And we acted on it. We acted on it. Frankie Coppola, Al Agostinelli, Pete and me, and others, Lucian, we all belong to the Ground Observer Corps. But we were at the headquarters. We weren't out in the field with binoculars. But we were on the earphones taking in the calls coming in. And believe me, if they said they would track the planes, okay? Believe me, if they said it's a 4-engine plane, I forgot the code words for it, but it was a 4-engine plane flying low coming south. That gets the attention. And then they pick it up. And then there was times when, not in our event, but there were times when the Air Force would scramble jets to investigate. Well, that's the truth, as I remember it. But I remember being there. And you know what you got out of it? A badge. If you put in so many hours, you got a little badge. And we were proud of that badge. That was the 50s. That was the 50s. We lived on the edge of fear. And the apocalyptic writings that you see here in Luke, those were very real to us. You didn't have to be a genius to realize what a cataclysm could occur through war. You know, nation rising against nation, kingdom against kingdom. We had already lived through that in the First and Second World War, but now with catastrophic nuclear warheads, rockets, massive annihilation, you know. That's why awesome sights and mighty signs will come from the sky. That wasn't too tough to imagine when you think of bombers and rockets, etc. It was a very real picture. It's the truth. It's the truth. If you're old like me, you might remember it. And a lot depends on where you were. We on the East Coast really did, because that's the route was going to come. Okay? But I don't know here in the Midwest. Maybe you guys here in the Midwest were more sensible, but we were living on the edge. And there was grounds for it, obviously. Do you know what we're like in Long Island Sound, and where I grew up, okay? And where I used to go swimming, it had a cottage at the beach, okay, in East Haven, Connecticut, Memorgwin, okay? There were sightings of Russian submarines. They were coming out, in and out of Long Island Sound. So this isn't the craziest crazy thing you could think of. These were real threats, you see? And we lived in this apocalyptic text by Luke meant something to us. The book of the Apocalypse, you know, it meant something to us because we thought we were going to be in the end time, we were going to face this horrible cataclysm. Remember that the year 1960 was supposed to be the cataclysmic year. Then it came and went. But that was apparently, it was said that the Blessed Mother said that's when the end was coming. I don't know. The difference between revelation, true piety, and superstition was blended together very neatly, at least in the Italian-American neighborhood that I grew up in. We blended it all together. That's the truth. And it's the truth. So when I read these texts, I think of the good old days. I think when I was a kid, how seriously we took it. Not the text as serious as Revelation, but its exactitude with regard to the times we were living in, that this was going to happen to us. So much so that we joined the Ground Observer Corps. You know how many homes had shelters in their cellar? Bomb shelters? With food supplied and stored? That was regular. We had a very deep cellar, so we already had that. And who didn't have a shotgun or two? We were very acutely aware that at any time the cataclysm could occur. I remember going fishing in the Thames River with my father, and you'd see the nuclear subs going by. You had to be there. We used to wave at them. We were fishing for stripers. They were fishing for Russians. You had to see them. You see the Nautilus class, I think that's what they were called, submarines going out. It was a different time. It was a terrifying time. And it so seemed to be the fulfillment of this prediction, the end time. Yeah. I look at these texts not as predictive, but as a revelation of the crisis of the soul. Not historical events, but moral events in human hearts and human souls, when we have to come to grips with life, the gospel in Christ. Not the Russians, but ourselves, our own heart and soul. That's the truth.